Yeah. Wait, how do the building spaceship parts work? Okay, so hang on. Let's start over. Design ship class. All right, so the ship needs to be filled out. So things that it needs off the bat: a reactor. Like, a lot of this is researched components. So this gives us a reactor. We're gonna need an engine for that. In this case, we'll do the advanced pulsar drive. Now, this doesn't have any weight, basically. However, as we add more pulsar drives on, it actually increases the weight of the reactor because it needs that size in order to give the power that it needs to power those engines, because these are they're basically a fission engine in this case. They require that electric current, 17.3 gigawatts of it, but that also requires heat, so it needs a radiator. Put a radiator here, and this will calibrate its size to how much waste heat is coming off the reactor. In this case, 960 tons of heat sink is required. After that, it needs a battery. Now, we can only have one type of battery on here, and since quantum's the best one, boom, quantum battery. That covers the power concerns for the weapons. Next up, we have utility modules. What do I want this ship to do? Well, let's see. I think I might want it to go to Jupiter, so there's a remass scoop so it can grab hydrogen out of the air, and I don't want to get hit by missiles, so here's an ECM. I want to protect my heat sinks in combat, so I need to retract them, so I'll add a potassium heat sink. This allows me to retract the radiator in combat, protecting it, and my ship will be able to store heat for a period of time while fighting. Now, heck, maybe I want to have more energy armament. Well, I can go back to my batteries and put those into the utility modules as well. That's good. Next up, nose weapons. This will be just the front of the ship here. It has a cone of fire coming out the front, usually about 45 degrees, so you do need to kind of point your ship in the direction. Let's go for an infrared laser in this case. That'll give me the distance, but I still need to get pretty close because of armor effectiveness in order for me to actually get the penetration I need to do the damage. But that's all I can do for the nose. What about hull weapons? Well, I only got 6 slots here. I kind of want to protect myself, so a defensive laser turret. But I don't like that. I think I want something a little bit better. We'll use the particle beam point defense turret. It's a bit stronger. It's a bit more on point. And you know what? I probably want to wreck something slow that's giving me problems, so I'll put on these Hera torpedoes as well. And after that, you know what? I want to throw more shit in the air, so I'll put on these railgun batteries I got recently, giving me some projectile ordnance. Then I look at this and I'm like, oh, I have more ordnance. So maybe what I'll do is I'll go over to my utility modules, I'll rip out one of those batteries and put in a magazine. I've doubled my ordnance for all this shit and still have enough power to do stuff. But then there's the final part, protection. Again, stuff you research. In this case, armors. You get 4 of them off the bat: steel, titanium, silicon carbide, and boron carbide. The difference in armors right now is not much. These first 2 have a resistance to chipping. Basically, that means as your ship takes damage, it loses armor effectiveness. With these kinds of armors, it won't lose that much, so it'll still give you a great deal of protection. Silicon carbide is basically your first low-weight option. It's strong, but it's cheap and it's thin. Boron carbide weighs more, but it has a resistance to kinetic damage, which theoretically at the beginning is all you have access to, because you only have access to the 6 and 10 inch guns and the missile battery. So it's just all kinetic damage you want to protect yourself from. This is an armor I've researched recently, composite armor. Now, this is where it gets a bit important. Generally, you want to kind of keep your ship nose on, because in the nose and the tail, it only costs 130 tons for this composite armor. But armoring the middle section per point, 2,000 tons. Now, I know offhand that most weapons are probably doing about 10, 15 damage right now, so I'll put my nose up to 10. I'll put the tail end to 5 because I want to keep my engines. You know, I'll give it 6. And then in the middle, I'll give it 5. Already, my ship is pretty freaking heavy because I've put on 10,000 tons of armor just in the middle of my ship alone. And even though I have all these engines and stuff, I haven't done the one last thing that's required. Propellant. Now, by holding shift, I can, or clicking on the number, I can put in my own custom number, or just clicking it, or holding shift, I will continuously build up my delta V. And right now, because I have access to more of the solar system, you'll notice that the number is red. Basically, in order to get around Earth Moon, you want at least 10 kps. Now, because I've added 65 propellant tanks, I've already lost speed. My cruise has gone down and my combat acceleration has gone down. But that's not enough anymore, because I have to maneuver, because I have to fight things, because I need to go further. Bare minimum right now for me is a cruise of 30. So I have to keep adding more and more and more propellant, because this engine is only so efficient and only delivers so much thrust. It's going to take me 263 propellant tanks to get just over 30 kps on my cruise delta V. This fuel will also be used in combat. When it's in combat, I'm going to be using a lot more. a lot more. Like 2.6 millig's is my cruise. 102 millig's is my combat. It's a good thing we're doing a space where weight doesn't matter too much unless you're close to a planet because gravity exists. It's still mass, that's the thing. It's still mass. You need to push that mass, and it still requires the energy to do that. That's the thing. Now, because I got this at 30 kps, I now have enough to maybe get to Mercury or Jupiter. Definitely like the asteroid belt. Mars, Venus, easy. Or I can do some fighting in Earth space. But I can't do a lot of fighting because, again, combat acceleration is only 102 millig's. The aliens we're fighting, G.5. So they already have 15 times my ability to maneuver. And this is a battleship. This is where we run into another thing. A big ship is not necessarily required for the job. Smaller ships, easier to produce. You can build more of them. Like, I could get... Like, this ship cost me 3 support. And 15 a month. Like, honestly, the money is one of those nebulous issues, how much you care. But the mission control, this is the thing you need to keep under. You need to keep this under control. If it goes over, you can't colonize anymore. You can't put down colonies. You can't build stations. Other factions will be able to steal your ships and your stations. This is bad. They stole my battleship one time. There's also a hidden mechanic where the combined loyalty of all your counselors is what is used to say how loyal your ships are if you do go over. As long as that number's under, we have perfect control, not a problem. Now, this is now a ship that could be built, but we now look at the construction cost for it. It's going to take us 2.7k water alone. This is mostly our fuel. This is pretty much entirely from our fuel. There's like 2.6k is fuel. That other 0.1k, that's other shit that's needed throughout this thing. The cost here for metal and not voltaics, volatiles, there we go. That's mostly, armor components, like this stuff. What's it? Yeah, the armor requires it. And it also requires a bit of the exotic materials, noble metals, sorry. We don't have access to exotics yet. The one thing I'm barely using is the nuclear material, and that's in the reactor itself. 0.69. Nice. Obligatory nice there. Now, we go over here to construction time. You'll notice that there's two numbers here. Right now, we have access to two kinds of shipbuilding facilities. A basic dock for the smaller stations, and a larger shipyard that we can use. Now, the smaller number obviously goes with the larger shipyard. And I've got a research recently which actually reduces my shipbuilding time by a quarter, which is awesome. Because honestly, these ships, like this ship, 117 days. This is like over 3 months. Over 3 months to build just this ship. So you got to think multiple yards. You got to think income. You got to think of like every little variable. Because once this ship is up, it needs to be supported. When this ship goes someplace, will it be able to fill itself up on fuel again? There are modules that'll allow you to land on rocks, that'll allow you to harvest materials in order to refill your stuff, if it has the right materials. Eventually, I think there's repair modules so that you can fix your ships far away from your stations. There's marine modules that allow you to capture stations. There are modules here that allow you to deploy platforms and outposts, both solar and nuclear materials. Like, these ships are for everything. They're just frames. The only issue is that only the utility modules can be used for various things. Yeah, I can't build into where the hard points are in order to get more stuff on here. Pretty much everything goes in its specific slot. The only difference is batteries can go in utility. That's it. And this, all this technology I currently have, is basic. It's exceptionally basic. This is early to early mid-game stuff, in all honesty. I am going to finish researching soon. Like this, I'm not going to build this ship because I have my own problems right now. Like, look, these are all ships I've designed. These are all ships I've designed throughout the eras, just to get stuff going. Like this Pegasus battleship. This was the one that was stolen from me so many eras ago. Viper missile bays, point defense, big ass laser, old ass pulsar drive, 3 magazines. So these 12 Vipers were like 48 Vipers for each one of these things. And I had 4 of these. This thing was basically designed to bomb shit, and this is the first ship I lost because someone took it from me. Because look at it, it's only got 10.1 kps. It was designed to function between the Earth and the Moon, and that's it. And even then, it's inefficient as shit. Because this advanced pulsar drive is the best engine I have for basic combat and stuff. I got more efficient ones. If I use this grid drive, like here, if I throw this grid drive in, so I only have 134 kps. I could go to freaking Neptune on that. But my cruise acceleration drops into the toilet. My combat acceleration is shit. This is basically a moving brick. There is nothing I can do to protect myself when it comes to maneuvers. Because that's one of the things. Maneuverability is important. You can avoid shots if you are maneuverable enough. At least the kinetic varieties. Maybe you can avoid missiles when they're coming in. Just a little bit. Lasers? That's not happening. You're going to get hit. If a laser gets on you, if any, that shit's hit scan. That's going to happen. I'm sorry. You start off with basically like here, solid rocket boosters. 1.7k, 45 milligauss. Here. I can put 6 on there. It's still shit. Oh, right, hang on. We can put the grid drive back on here. There, 6 grid drives. Okay, it's still shit. Eventually, I'm going to have access to an Orion drive, which is the one that pushes out a small nuclear warhead and blows it up behind the ship in order to push it forward. I can only have one of those. I can't do the 6 drive option on here. It'd be hilarious if I could, but I can't. Well, that pulsar drive, if you made that ship that could ram into multiple others and just ran into that ship's at speed, it's... Unfortunately, even if I had a ship strong enough to do that... Like, okay, that's the thing I wanted to point out. Okay, hang on, let me pull up the design. Here it is, Battle Bus -C. This was the ship that ran into my enemy ship. I don't know why. I still don't know why. It wasn't designed to do that, but it was my most maneuverable ship because, like, the armor is completely stripped out of it. This thing is designed to motor. It almost has half a G worth of combat acceleration. And when it tapped that ship, it blew the fuck up. Admittedly, it's a small ship. Like, it's a frigate. It's a small ship. And although ramming is possible, it's not something I want to do generally. Like, it's... Because in order to ram, one, I still need to have the ability to maneuver my ship into their ship. It also requires me to their ship to be less maneuverable than my ship. Also a problem. Like, it's survivability. And again, you're losing a ship. A viable combat ship is worth more to me than some sort of ramming vessel, which I might be able to hit them with. Because again, I'm operating these ships via a skipping rope on a wooden ship's wheel. That's all I can do.